Hi, I'm Tom, and in this video I will talk about layers system in FreeCAD. Layers are part of the Draft and BIM workbenches, but it can be used in other workbenches too. I will show how to create and manage layers, how to move elements in and out of layers, and few other workflows related to layers. I'll be using FreeCAD version 1.0 release candidate. I will be demonstrating layers using 2D elements in Draft Workbench, but you can apply the same principles to BIM Workbench and all 3D elements. Some of the layer tools are on the Draft Utility Tools toolbar. So, let's get to it. If you are used to layers in other CAD software such as AutoCAD, you may be surprised by some of the differences. Layers in FreeCAD work in similar ways to group, as they are closely related, but in some ways they are different. Layers enable you to organize objects in your project. So here I've got a sample 2D project with some draft elements created inside of it, and the project is not organized at all. To start working with layers, I will fire up the Layers Manager up here, and this opens up the Layers Manager window. Here I can manage my layers. So first off, let's create a new layer by clicking the New button, and you can see that new layer is created. Let's rename it by double-clicking here and rename the layer to Walls Thick. So this will be the name of the layer. Here I can change the line width. So for layer walls thick, I want to have thick line width. So I will change the number from 2 to 6. The applicable range of line widths is from 1 to 10. Here you can write 15, but the line widths will not be larger than 10, so this will default to line width 10. So I will use 6. Here in draw style, you can change the line type between solid, dash, dotted, and dash dot. So I will leave it as solid. In the line color, I can change the line color. So I will double click here. I will change the color to red. Hit OK. And it's not, red is not here, but if I click away, the color changes. The same way I can change the faces, the color of faces. So I will double click here, and let's say I will change the faces to yellow color, hit OK, click here. I could also change the transparency of elements inside of the layer, and I can change the line print color. This one is used in the Tech Draw workbench, and I will get to this later. So I have created my layer. Let's create another one. So let's create walls thin, and let's leave it like it is, just change the color. And let's create another one, which will be equipment. And let's change the color to blue. And another one, there will be annotation. I'm preparing my layers. I could create them later, but I'm preparing them now for my drawing. So annotations, let's say, let's make them purple. That's it. And let's add another new one, and this one will be overhead lines. And we can change the color, let's say, to blue. But we will also change the draw style from solid to dashed for overhead lines. So these are the layers that I will use in my project. Now, if I click OK, the layers are created, and you can see them down in the model tree. They are created in the layers container, and if I expand this, you can see my layers that were created from the layer manager. Now the layers are created, but they are empty. So how do I move objects into the layers? I can select an object here in the model tree. It's this label, or I could easily select it also in my 3D workspace. It's selected here, and now I drag and drop it onto the layer that I want it to be placed on. So I will drag and drop it to annotation. And you can see that this element, the label, has been placed on the layer, and it has taken over the properties of the layer. So the annotation, we changed just the line color to purple. So if I place object into the layer, it automatically overtakes the properties of the layer. Now let's move these two objects. I will select them with Control to layer walls thick. So I will scroll up here, and now if I don't have the layers at the same place in the model tree, so I have to scroll up and down. I have to move them by clicking and dragging them down and placing my cursor, still holding my mouse, placing it here, and then the model tree is scrolled up and down. So this way I can place them on the walls thick layer, and you can see that the elements are there and they have overtaken. The line width has changed, the line color, and also the face color according to what I set in the layer properties. So with the dimensions, I can select the top one, shift select the bottom one, and I will also move them to the annotation layer. Now with the kitchen sink, and I will also with Control select this line. So I've got these. I will move them to the equipment layer. And I forgot to create another layer, doors and windows. So I will show you another way how to create a new layer. If I right click on the layer container, there's an option to add a new layer. So I can click it, and the new layer is created, and its name is layer. So I have to come here and either right click and choose rename, or select the F2 button, and I will name it doors and windows. And let's say I wanna select these 4 lines and also these 2 because this is window, and I will drag and drop them down to the walls, doors and windows. You can see that doors and windows, it didn't change color or anything because I can change the properties of the layer through layer manager, or I can also go to the properties of the layer. If I click here, I've got properties of the layer, and I will go to view, and I can change the properties also from here. So I can change the line color, I don't know, to this one. But let's say I made a mistake, and these 2 lines should have been not in the doors and windows layer, but in the overhead lines layer. How do I move one object from one layer to another layer, or multiple objects? I will select them, and I just drag and drop them to the overhead lines layer, and you can see that they have changed their properties according to what is set in the layer. It's dashed line blue color. Okay, So what's remaining to manage are these two lines, and they are thin walls. So I will place them here. Now we know how to move objects between layers, but what if I wanted these two lines to be not in any layer at all? So I will select them and move them up to the top, up to the document, and place them here. And now they are outside of the layer container, so they are independent. But you can see that the properties that have been assigned to them in the layer have are still with the object. So the line color and the line thickness and draw style, etc. So it remains once it's changed, and but I can still change it back. So I will move these two lines again to the overhead lines. And let's take a look. If I change, I can still, even though the object is in the layer, I can still, if I select the element and I go to the view properties, and I will change the draw style to dotted and the color to let's say black, you can see that even though it's still in the layer, I can change independently of the layer the view properties of the element, and it's still in the layer. But if I go to the layers manager and I change the properties of this overhead layer, so I will change it to, let's say, dash dot, and change the color to orange. I'll hit OK, and I will hit OK. The one that I changed independently is overridden also with the other ones. So you have to be careful if you change something independently and then change the layer properties. All objects change according to the latest change of layer properties. Now let's take a look at placing new objects into layers, because you have seen how I placed existing objects to layer. But if I create a new, let's say, line up here, you can see that it's placed outside of the layer, any layer. But we've got this button, the auto group button here. If I click on it, you can see the list of layers in my project, and also a button to create a new layer. And I can select, let's say I will select walls thick, and this is the auto group layer now. And if I create a new element, it will be automatically placed inside of this current layer. If I drop down here and I see walls thick, you can see that this line was placed inside of the walls thick. And I can set the current layer also by, let's right clicking on a layer and select activate this layer. So now annotation is activated. If I create new objects, they are placed on the active layer. I will delete these objects. So this is how you place new objects straight into a layer. And what you can see under the right click mouse button under the context menu is the option, very useful, select layer contents. If I click this one, you can see that all of the elements inside of the layer have been selected, and I could work with them, I could delete them, I could move them, I could edit their properties, etc. So this is very useful. So once the document is organized in layers, you can work with them. And let's say I want to do printout or just see the document without annotation. I can click the eye and hide them, or hit space. That's the standard FreeCAD behavior. So I can turn them on or off. I can do this also in the layer manager, turning them on or off by clicking this checkbox. So I turned on equipment, and if I exit the layer manager, it's turned on. Now if I go back to layer manager again, there are some useful things that I can do with the layers. I will create let's create a new 3 new layers, and let's say I want to delete this one. I can hit delete, so that's clear. If I choose select all, I will select all, and I can either turn them on or off, or change a property. I can also control or shift select multiple layers, and then toggle them on or off with this button. What is very useful, and it's harder to achieve working in the model tree, is the isolate. So if I just want to work with walls, I can select these 2 layers, hit isolate, hit OK, and now only these 2 are selected. And then once I'm done working with this this setup of layers, I can select all and turn them on easily, like so. Let's also see, I will create 2 new elements, and I will place them. Oh, it's in the annotation. It was placed in the annotation layer, so I will place them in this new layer number 1. There's an option. If I right click on the layers container, there's an option to merge duplicate layers, and this will merge all layers which have got the same name but different number behind them, and they will merge all the elements, so you don't lose any elements. I will place this one to the new layer, and so if now I go to layers, merge layer duplicates, there's only one new layer, and it has got all of these objects merged inside. And what's also important is that if you delete a layer with some contents inside of it, the contents, the objects, are not deleted, but they are placed on the top of the document. So if I right click and choose to delete this layer, you can see that these objects are still here. They are just outside of any layer. So let's now delete them again, also these objects. Okay, so now let's take a look at how layers behave in coordination with groups. So I will create a new group. I will just name it group. The important thing to note is that elements can be placed inside of the layer and also inside of a group. So if I have this wire here, this one, and I click and drag it to the group, you can see that it's inside of the group and also inside of the layer. So I can work with it both inside of the group or inside of the layer. And it still takes over if I change the color of the walls thick to purple or blue. It still behaves as is in the layer. If I turn off the layer, it disappears. If I turn off the group, it disappears. So I can work with the elements inside of the group and inside of the layer that's like duplicated. Now, if I don't want to have the object, we have learned how to move object away from the group. I would drag it to the top of the model tree. If I want to take it out of the group, not have it there, I will again take it up to the top of the tree, and it's not placed inside of, like, outside of the group, but it's just now only placed inside of the layer. So this is how individual objects work. What is also interesting is that I can place uh, I can place layers inside of groups. So if I take this layer, drag and drop it on this group, it's not placed in the layers container, but it's inside of the group or container. So this might be useful, let's say for creating printouts. If I wanted to print everything except of the annotation, I could place all of these layers inside of the group, and still these layers, I mean, if I change the walls thick back to the red color, they still behave as I have shown you previously. But now let me move these layers back to the layer container, delete the group, and let me now explain how the line print color works. This can be set a different way than the line color that we see inside of the FreeCAD, and this line print color works when objects are placed as a draft view on the TechDraw workbench on a page. So with the walls thin, let me change the color to blue. Walls thick, let me change it also to blue. And overhead lines, let's change it to green. Hit OK. And now I will quickly create a new TechDraw page. And here on the page, I will select my layers container and create draft view from all of these layers. So I placed my view here. Now I select it, and in the data I will change the scale to 0.05. And here you can see, if I tile my windows, you can see that the colors are same. Why is that? This is because by default the TechDraw workbench ignores this line print color for the layers, and you have to turn it on at the layer that you want to override the color. So I will go to walls thick, and in the properties, in the view properties of the whole layer, here under the print section we've got use print color, and I will change it to true, and nothing happens because I have to redraw the page. So I will go back to the TechDraw workbench and use the redraw page, and you can see that now it's taking the color that is set as a print color. So I have to do this also for the walls thin and for overhead lines. And now I will redraw the page, and you can see that the thin walls are also blue and the overhead lines are green. The last thing that I want to mention is that all of the things that I've shown you here with the 2D elements also work with the 3D elements. So I've got a wall here, and if it's placed, it has been placed already in the annotation layer. If I drag and drop it to walls thick, it changes the color and also the line style. So I've been showing everything on a 2D document, but the layers are useful also when working with 3D elements. Okay, so this is all about layers. We have learned how to create layers, how to manage them, how to work with element inside of layers, how to work with layer properties. I think the biggest weak spot right now, as of FreeCAD 1.0, when working with layers, is placing existing objects inside of the layers, because once the project is larger, it's quite tedious to drag and drop them. There's a tool here which enables to move objects, selected objects, to a group, but currently as of FreeCAD 1.0 it doesn't support moving these selected objects to layers. So hopefully this functionality will be added, so moving large number of objects inside of the layers will be will be faster with this tool. If layers have proven to be useful in your workflow, you can consider supporting Jorik van Haver on his Patreon, because he's the main developer of the Draft and BIM workbenches. Link to his Patreon will be in the description box below. I hope this was useful, and I will see you in the next one.